welcome. You will be seeing or are seeing, hopefully, my screen. This is Dave Jones, and let me advance. So here's my background. I'm one of your two hosts. I live in Pittsburgh. By the way, the wind chill is about 11 degrees here. For those of you in warm climates, I'm jealous. I've been a corporate citizen for 26 years, and in 2008, left the ranks of a private, went public company here in Pittsburgh, where I was vice president of sales and marketing to gain some work life balance. I was traveling all over the world and lost a lot of that opportunity to get work life balance back into focus. During my tenure in corporate, I worked for the likes of Procter and Gamble, and my most recent job was Matthews International, where I was vice president, and I received two U.S. patents in merchandising. Since leaving in 2008 to become an entrepreneur, yes, right when the Great Recession began is when I began. And that was a very interesting time, but a very successful time. I owned and operated my first franchise and sold it in 2016. We did very well and we were successful in getting it above 3 million. So I was always wanting to list my business for sale. I did so, and in 21 days, I had three asking price offers. So that was very exciting and worked very hard to get to that point. I've since been working for a franchise for 2 years where I ran resales, mergers, acquisitions. So I got great experience on the franchise side. And together with my experience as a franchise owner, the first go around and about to open two new franchises here in 2021 in Pittsburgh, I have 14 years of franchise experience. My day job is doing what we're doing today is helping folks to evaluate franchise opportunities to see if it's right for them. I'm joined by Mike. Mike, would you please give your background and share it with us?
Yeah, thank you, Dave. And I'd like to thank everybody that's taken that first step on the entrepreneurial journey to join us today. You can see the bullet points about me on the slide there. And of course, I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia, where it's not minus 11 or 11 degrees. So I've got a nice sunny day today, Dave, not to rub it in. um, Anyway, real quickly, I've been humbly in the franchising world for the past 28 years and somewhat parallel path as David. I started out as an independent entrepreneur, quickly learned about the advantages of franchising. And that was my entry into the franchising world. I had a number of multi-unit franchises that I owned and operated. I was also blessed with having close to 2 decades on the corporate side of franchising with Burger King Corporation. And just to share a little story as to why I do what I do today and why I'm passionate about helping anybody that's entrepreneurial, it's very simple for me. Franchising has had a huge impact on my personal, my family, and it's just been a great vehicle to leverage when it comes to, whatever your business goals may be. But long story short, while I was with Burger King Corporation, they were acquired by 3G Capital. This was well before the pandemic. And, needless to say, there was, 380 of my colleagues that were let go when Burger King was acquired. And it was a real eye opener for me. It was at that time that I realized, that the corporate landscape has changed. I have nothing against corporate America at all, but I did learn that there's been a paradigm shift. It's not what it was like, 20 or 30 years ago, where you could, for the most part, retire with the company. And then I really learned that from the people that Dave and I have been helping this past year. We all know what's been going on in 2020. So my passion now, after what I call leaving the corporate world, is just what I said. I enjoy helping anybody that's entrepreneurial to get educated on how to leverage franchises as a career or diversification strategy, which is what we'll talk about today. So a little bit about me. Certainly been blessed with being in every aspect of franchising, from the ownership side, the corporate side, as well as the development side. So let's talk a little bit about what we're going to cover with you today. It is really an interesting time, the way that we're starting the year off. At this point, I can tell you that, at least from our perspective, in spite of what may be said on the media, there is a huge swell of interest in business ownership. People have got a different mindset, and we're going to talk about that today. Let's talk a little bit about, how the paradigm shift has taken place, is not only people understanding that, hey, it's time to have a plan B. I'm not as secured in my corporate job as I thought I was. And there are some really interesting opportunities right now that you can take advantage of when it comes to business ownership. So we're going to talk about that for sure in detail today. The other thing we want to talk about is that, obviously entrepreneurship isn't for everybody. It isn't. Some folks are better served with, maintaining a corporate job. Other people are a little more entrepreneurial. And what's really neat about franchising is you can do both. We'll talk about how you can keep a job and diversify into other options, and what are the factors that will help you determine if you're right for franchising and franchising's right for you. The other thing we want to talk about today, which is really important, is that this is an investment. Anytime you're going to be entrepreneurial, there's an investment involved. This is real important to point out to everybody on the call today. This isn't a sales-driven webinar. Franchising is not necessarily a sales-driven approach. What you're going to learn today is, how the process of investigating a franchise should look, how Dave and I can add value and help you navigate the due diligence process on investigating a franchise, and most importantly, understanding that when you're looking at franchises, it is a mutual evaluation process. So this is not a car shopping ordeal. A good franchise company isn't looking to sell you anything. You have to be a good fit for them. They have to be a good fit for you. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today as well. Let's go to the next slide, please. So here's a little of what the franchise consulting company does, which is, of course, who Dave and I are affiliated with. I'll humbly say that Dave and I are recognized as, the top consultants in our organization. As you can see, there's about 150 of us throughout, including other parts of the world. We are international, as you see on the screen there. And we serve a couple of roles. And to really sum it up, anything that has to do with franchising, we're a resource for you. So number one, we do help companies that are successful independent businesses determine if they are, quote, franchisable. So we do help businesses franchise and scale, okay, through franchising. But really the purpose of our call today, and which is why you're on, is we match investors with franchises that are the right fit. Okay, that's really our specialty there. The other thing I want to share with you is that, as you all may or may not know, franchising is huge. It is a cornerstone in our economy when it comes to business. As you can see, it's a $787 billion industry. And what's really fun when we work with different investors is educating and exposing people to the different franchises that could be a fit for them. You know, a lot of this when we're working with clients is that they don't realize there could be a franchise they didn't even consider that could be a great fit. There is so much more to franchising than brick and mortar and fast food. There's over 4,000 brands. As you can see there, franchising is set to grow for the 10th year in a row. In spite of the pandemic, there are franchises that are doing exceptionally well that are considered essential services, that are recession resilient, for example. We'll talk about some of that. You can clearly see that the impact of franchising and the fact that there's almost 760,000 locations and they permeate every industry. As I just said, if there's not an industry out there for the most part that doesn't have a connective tissue with the franchise opportunity. And the best thing about it is that it employs close to 9 million workers. So we'll get into a little bit of detail on that as well. So when Dave and I are working with investors, you can see some of the bullet points on their slide, on the slide there. Here's the bottom line. Most investors that look into franchising, they're looking into it to compress time and capital. That's why I did it. So what you see there is when you look at a franchise business, although nothing's guaranteed, it does help mitigate risk. You're able to evaluate a proven business model. You're able to leverage systems and processes and resources that are available to you to help set you up for success versus you trying to figure out everything on your own and reinventing the wheel. So the benefit when it comes to compressing time is that you've got a proven system and business model that you can leverage and execute on to make your own. The other part of that is that franchising provides ongoing training, not only at the beginning when you set your business up, but throughout your relationship with the franchisor. The other part of what I enjoyed about being a franchisee is that I got to tell you, you will develop some of the strongest relationships with other franchisees. When you become part of a brand or a system, part of the advantages that you can take advantage of is that collaboration with other franchisees. You know, I'm going to tell you, when I got into business, I certainly wanted to get to know the top 20% of the franchisees that were doing well. There's a lot of power and value when it comes to collaboration within a franchise system. The other part about it is that franchises are nothing more than vehicles to get you from point A to point B. That's how you want to look at this. The paths are never ending. You know, when Dave and I talk with you, we would want to understand your business goals and help you get definition on what would make sense on how to leverage franchising. There are franchises that you can be owner operators in. There's franchises that you can be semi-absentee if you want to keep your job. We work with plenty of existing entrepreneurs and franchisees that want to diversify their portfolio. Okay, that's real important. You can hedge against inflation. And there's all different ways for you to build a business with value. One of the benefits of franchising is when it comes time to selling your business, depending upon the brand and industry, you may be able to command a better selling price, you know, because there's value to belonging to a business, and it's a lot easier to scale your business when you're part of a franchise system. Last thing on that slide that's important before I turn it over to Dave is I want to point out the fact that at the end of the day, like myself and like Dave, 73% of people that become franchisees would do it again, okay? And 90% enjoy operating their business. So franchising has some benefits in that regards. I'm going to turn it back over to Dave, and he's going to talk to you a little bit about our process and how we can help you with the franchise investigation.
Thanks, Mike. So, as Mike pointed out, this is a journey. This is a journey that's not for everybody, but you've taken the first step today in determining if it's right for you. It's a journey of learning, it's a journey of saying no. And I tell folks all the time the second best answer I hear every day is no. Obviously, yes is great, but no is okay because if you're going to begin with 4,000 opportunities, and hope to get to one, you got to be able to say no often. And so that ability to discern that marriage, your skills, your talent, your capital, what you like, what you don't like, and together marry that with a franchise that is seeking from you what you are offering to them along with your capital is a matchmaker. And so that's the process. It has to be saying no. Along the journey, we'll be providing a lot of information. So today you'll hear about and have already learned about that franchising isn't just Subway or McDonald's. And we'll talk about that one-on-one and in greater detail, as well as later on in this session. So you'll get that 30,000-foot overview. Then we reverse the discussion. The next discussion that will occur after that, for those who choose to continue learning, will be you discussing with us what it is specifically you would like to do and what is appropriate and what would resonate with you and what wouldn't. I tell everybody that I work with in 2008, I left a great job. I was blessed. I worked very hard. Vice president of a publicly traded company, stock options, deferred comp, but it was killing me. So I had somebody on the other end of the phone, just like Mike and just like me. But where it was different is she, and I can't remember her name, failed to listen to a single thing I shared. And when it came to presenting franchises, the very things I am certain that I verbalized that I was not interested in, she showed me. So it was very frustrating. I ended up proceeding, did a lot of the work on my own, which is not what I'd recommend. But that was my why. That was my aha. If I ever did go forward, which I did, and if I ever sold my franchise, which I did, and if I ever wanted to be a consultant, which I am, I would venture to do things a lot differently. So it's all about that mutual evaluation. So as we're learning about you and you're learning about opportunities, then there's a connection. The connection will be you speaking with a franchise. And there's a mutual evaluation that begins in that process. There used to be a day, and there still are some out there, franchises where if you can fog a mirror and write a check, you probably would be welcomed. I would never show you or discuss with you any of those opportunities because it's about success. And 100% of the reason that you will decide to go forward if you choose to do so, or at least 90% of it, will be how is validation. When you talk to and get in the weeds with other owners, what are you learning and do you like what you're learning? So that's the mutual evaluation. It begins, as I mentioned today, it continues on as you share information about you. We will get that formalized. We will present opportunities. You'll go through the franchise evaluation process, which is a mutual evaluation, and you will ultimately attend, if you're still moving forward, a meet the team day. That's where you get the last look at senior leadership, determine culture, learn specifically about who is behind me to help me to become successful, and then you move forward. What are some goals we often hear about when it comes to those seeking franchise opportunities? As Mike alluded to a little earlier, like everything, or like many things, not everything, like many things in life, sometimes it comes down to money. So if there's an opportunity that is, and everybody's definition of money and free cash flow is different. So you would like to be able to have an opportunity that generates free cash flow with strong upsides and can scale and grow with reasonable risk tolerance. You also want to marry your unique skill sets. If you are very people adverse, you just would rather be processing accounting tax returns and you really don't enjoy interacting with other folks. Nothing wrong with that. That's you. It would be foolish to look at an opportunity that requires a lot of business development skills, networking skills, etc. So that's the right fit we talk about. How can you verify that this is right for you? Well, you will hear about during this session today an FDD, stands for Franchise Disclosure Document. Franchising to me is one of the most informative, transparent, professional decision you can make. When we chose to go to work for somebody, we tried to check references. They checked references on us as employees. But at the end of the day, you didn't really get to know that culture well until you immerse yourself and took the job. To some degree, that's true with any kind of entrepreneurial position. But with franchising, you can get that transparency, you can get that information, and it's a highly regulated industry to provide you those tools for you to do a thorough evaluation and thorough validation. So, what makes a good franchise owner? Mike and I probably talk to, oh man, I don't even know Mike, but it's thousands of people a year. And when you get to know somebody and you present them to a franchise that you know is a good fit, we get feedback from those franchises like, wow, he or she, they're great. Why are they great? Well, there are three things that I think every good, successful franchise is looking for. You don't want to buy a job. You don't want to go status quo. If you do want to do that, you may not be right for franchise. You may not be right for investments. So you have to possess a growth mindset. And if I'm not good at it today, I'm going to learn about that through the benefit of a playbook. The second thing you're going to want to do is possess an ownership perspective. We have all worked with and have seen in the corporate side those that hang out. They blame. They're not accountable. They if they don't achieve a goal or objective that was likely achievable by you or others, they're blaming others. Um, you don't you want to lose that if that's and that's probably not you or you wouldn't be looking at that. But we've all seen that. You have to be able to accept accountability for your own action. A franchise, Mike and I always say, will get you 70% of the way to your goal. The 30% is going to be you and your execution and how well you do when you adopt their model. Finally, if you want to do it your way, don't join a franchise. That doesn't mean you want to be a rote robot and follow everything that is without deviating from the middle of the road. That's not what we're talking about. But you do want to take advantage of others before you that have learned the mistakes that you would make have already been made in all likelihood by others. So you want to be able to take advantage and become a joiner. And I mentioned a number of times this large, audacious document called a franchise disclosure document. You will often hear it referred to as an FDD. There are 23 items in every franchise disclosure document. And the ones that I really like to point out is litigation, item number 3. You know, folks can sue for any reason or for no reason. Because there may be litigation pending against a franchise doesn't necessarily mean run. That's a bad, but it does present a caution flag that you need to do further investigation to understand what was behind that litigation. Items 5 and 6 are initial fees and other fees. That's your investment level. Your ongoing investment level, you'll pay usually a territory fee or a franchise fee, and then you'll pay royalties and marketing ad funds. And that varies from franchise to franchise, but on the low end, it would be 5%. On a high end, it probably 10%. And many of them fall in this 6 to 8%. Item seven is estimated initial investment. That is published, that is validated, that is reviewed federally before it can go out and into your hands. What that means is you might imagine real estate at a high end retail space in San Diego might have a different cost structure than real estate in Duluth, Minnesota. However, you need to know that range and that will be published. How many times have you entered a job where you can go and look and see the people before you know exactly if I do my job, this is what I'm going to make? You hope you're going to make that. You hope you're going to rise. You hope you'll get all the bonuses and raises that you want. In franchising, you can see that. You can see the financial performance of existing franchise owners. Each franchise represents that differently. It could be by the length of time you've been doing franchising. It can be, as Mike pointed out earlier, when I joined my first franchise, I wanted to go meet those top 10%. I wanted to see what it was that they were doing that made them successful, and I wanted to replicate that. Put my own style to it, but I wanted to get to know them. So obviously, you want to look at the higher performing folks, but not everybody is a rock star. So you get a chance to look at the middle of the pack. And then you look at the lower performing folks, and that's sort of that's the worst possible case scenario. But you want to understand what is it that made them a lower performing. Maybe they're just simply not working the business at all, and they just want to sit back and enjoy life. Now, item 20 is the number of existing franchises open and operating, as well as franchisee information. So remember I said earlier about validation. Validation is critical, but you can validate by talking to franchise owners. And then finally, the actual franchise agreement will be published in that. So the FDD, critically important, very transparent, and allowing you to make it an educated and informed decision if this is right for you or not. Another key part of making that decision is, unless you have endless capital and prefer to write a check, which some folks do, most folks don't, you need to better understand, what are my options? What are my finance options? And what does my capital strategy look like? And how can I ever find out if I'm right for it? And am I willing to do it? So in the world of franchising, there are a lot of banks. There are a lot of folks that are self-professed to be experts in lending. I can tell you, Fran Fund isn't self-professed. It's professed by those that have used it. The leading franchise broker for getting you the kind of capital you need and tapping the resources. So we are delighted to be joined by Shirley Kefjan, Senior Funding Consultant from Fran Fund. Shirley, the floor is yours.
Hey, Dave, thanks so much for you and Mike for having me here today. I appreciate it. Just a little bit of information on the screen here about Fran Fund and sort of where we come from, what we do. The real bottom line is that Fran Fund was established because there was a big gap between folks who want to become business owners and getting the funding necessary to make those dreams a reality. So our founder, having a lot of experience in the franchise world himself, recognized that gap and started Fran Fund so that we could help fill that and make sure that funding is available to folks. So as we start to talk about the different ways that you could potentially fund a business, you can move to the next slide there. There we go. I think one of the things that's really important to know just as a foundation is you don't have to have a money tree in your backyard to become a franchise owner. As you can see here, there are lots of different ways that folks can fund a business. Some may involve giving up equity, giving up some ownership in your business. So this is where partners or investors could come into play. There are options that allow you to use assets as the security. You can borrow against the asset itself. So this could include an equipment leasing strategy or potentially a home equity line of credit. If you have a non-IRA, non-401k investment portfolio, you could potentially obtain a line of credit against that portfolio, and that could provide some funding for your business. Obviously, debt funding is a very common option. So these could be credit cards, bank loans, including small business loans. So this is something that we'll dive into a little bit deeper here. And then the fourth category is fairly obvious as well. If you do happen to have that money tree in your backyard, you can certainly utilize that and do some self-funding. But there is also an option that allows you to access your retirement savings without you having to pay taxes or penalties. So we'll dive into that option a little bit deeper here as well. What is a Fran Plan? So the Fran Plan is the name of our Rollover for Business Startup program, or you'll hear the acronym ROBS, R-O-B-S. This is the strategy I just referred to that would allow you to access your own pre-tax retirement dollars, and you can invest that money directly into your small business without paying any income taxes or early withdrawal penalties for touching that money. Some of the benefits of this program, in addition to not paying taxes or penalties, would be that you're not creating any debt. Maybe could you move back to the last slide? Thanks. You're not creating any debt as you get the business up and running. So that certainly allows you to cash flow a little bit more quickly, become profitable a little bit more quickly. This is a program that's written right into the Internal Revenue Code. So there is nothing shady going on there. This was not created to get around rules and regulations, very much in line with the IRS and the Department of Labor. It also is not a program that you have to be approved for. So credit scores don't apply. You don't have to show income history. Although if you are planning to borrow to help get your business up and running, this can actually be a strategy combined with a small business loan to really get you access to the total amount of capital that would be necessary. So as we talk a little bit more about how this program works, the first step is to create a C corporation, and that C corporation really becomes the operating entity for the small business itself. You would then create a new 401k plan that would be sponsored by the corporation. And then you, as a W-2 employee of the business, you would have the ability to participate in the 401k that's been created. So you would actually roll over funds that you might have in an IRA, or maybe in a 401k from an old job. Maybe you have a TSP because you're a veteran. Lots of different accounts will qualify, but we're rolling money out of that account into the new 401k. And even though that new 401k would be sitting at Fidelity or Charles Schwab or, Merrill Lynch, right? An organization like that, instead of using their traditional options and putting your money back out on the market like you're used to doing, you would actually use this money to purchase the stock in the newly formed corporation. So rather than investing your money in Apple or Best Buy stock, you are investing your retirement money right into the stock of your own business. Now, Dave and Mike can always get us connected in a more one-on-one manner to talk that through in more detail, but that is a really, really good opportunity to get access to those funds without the penalties that you might otherwise expect. Now, another very popular option for small business funding is SBA lending. What this means is banks and lending institutions are writing loans for small businesses. You, as the business owner, will have to sign a guarantee for the loan that says you're ultimately responsible for the debt, but the federal government, the Small Business Administration, steps in and they sign a backup guarantee for the bank, which really incentivizes the banks to lend this money because they know if there's a worst case scenario and the borrower is not able to repay, they're going to be reimbursed for a large chunk of that. Because that SBA guarantee is available, banks are very, very dependent on it. So you generally will only see a bank offering a non-SBA or a more conventional loan product if maybe you're opening your third or fourth location, or you're doing some expansion or upgrades to an existing location. The minimum loan amount that most banks like to lend out right now is $100,000. These loans can go up to $5 million, just depending on the need for the business itself. One very exciting thing that some of you may have already heard about is, based on some of the recent stimulus funding that was included in the 2021 budget, the Small Business Administration is going to be making the first 6 loan payments for new loans that are approved between February 1st and September 30th of 2021. This is not just a deferral, so they're not tacking it onto the back end. This is a true waiving of payments. And so again, for folks interested in borrowing, this is a really, really nice opportunity based on COVID, so we are not likely to see it again, and certainly something worth taking advantage of. The other very exciting thing that is happening right now is, traditionally, the Small Business Administration will charge you as the borrower a fee, generally somewhere between 2 to 3%, because the Small Business Administration is providing the bank with that backup guarantee. But what they have done is they have waived that guarantee fee that gets passed to you as the borrower for this same time period, for loans that are approved through September 30th this year. So that's another really significant cost savings for folks moving forward with loans. At FranFund, our job is to help put together the loan package itself, make sure that it's accurate and attractive, shop the loan with banks who are actively working with startup loans today, and really see that loan through to success. So again, that's something we can always talk about more in a one-on-one manner, but I do want to give you a little bit of information about what you should expect with the different loan programs that are out there. So the first loan that we'll touch on here is the SBA 7A loan. This is the product that you would use if your business required a loan of $200,000 or more. This is also the loan product that we would use if the business that's right for you required any construction or build out within the physical location. With this program, as you can see, the credit criteria is pretty straightforward. You know, they want to see a pretty clean credit history, minimum score of 680. Banks will ask that you as the borrower put in up to 30% of the cash injection yourselves. I'll tell you that right now, what we're seeing with a lot of banks is more like 20 to 25% as the cash injection. But you should expect that some cash will come from you, some money will come from the bank. The federal government does not allow them to lend out 100% of your startup costs. Another important criteria with that SBA 7A loan, if we just flip back for a second here, you should expect that banks will want to use a personal asset as security or collateral for the loan itself. And the most common thing to see them do is place a lien on real estate that you own. The final thing you'll see there is we do have to help these banks understand what would happen in a worst case scenario. They're pretty conservative. And what they like to see is some outside income coming into the household and or maybe liquid resources, so that if the business really needed help with its loan payment or its lease payment in the first few months of operation, that you would have the ability to personally step in and help the business with those major payments. So the next loan program that we'll talk about here is the SBA Express loan. You'll sometimes hear this referred to as the SBA small loan. And the reason for that is the maximum amount that you can borrow with the Express program is $150,000. We cannot use SBA Express money for construction or build out inside of a business location. So this becomes the more appropriate loan product if you're moving forward with more of a service-based business, where maybe you or your employees are going to your customers to provide goods and services. You'll see similar requirements: clean credit score and credit history, having the ability to show some coverage for a loan payment or lease payment in that first year. One of the things that's unique with the Express program is that when it's all said and done, we do have to be able to show a bank that you personally have about $50,000 in available liquidity. This could be savings, this could be an investment portfolio. Often they will consider some amount of retirement funds toward this requirement, but this is one that's a little more unique with that Express program. The other thing is with the Express loan, you're going to find the minimum cash injection to be more like 10%. So that number is a little bit lower based on the lower loan amount as well. As I mentioned before, one of the things we do here at Fran Fund is really help folks prepare to be in a good position to receive SBA loans. And so on the next slide there, you'll see some contact information for me. But again, Dave and Mike can certainly get us connected for a more one-on-one conversation to really strategize on what options could be a good fit for you.
Shirley,
Thank you.
very much. Before I turn it back over to Mike, sometimes in this technological world we're living in, the virtual world we're living in, technology has a mind of its own. So Shirley, I apologize, but your presentation just wanted to advance when it felt like it. So I apologize for taking our crowd and bouncing you back and forth, but it gives you the genuine nature of what we do. We're not perfect, but we're going to give you an honest try. So
No, that's great. You're keeping me on my toes.
all right, sorry, Shirley. Okay, Mike, all yours.
No, thanks for that clarification, Dave. I was wondering if our technology has a mind of its own sometimes. So anyway, well, Shirley, great job, and everybody on the phone. You know, we appreciate you hanging with us. Let me do a quick summary very quickly on where we're at right now. Number one, you know, you can certainly see all the different avenues and paths you can take, you know, when it comes to franchises. And I think Shirley did an absolute job. You know, when we do our consultations, if you all want to get with Dave and I one-on-one, which we'll talk about, you know, we'll clearly share how you make your dream of owning a business a reality. As you can see, there are a lot of funding options out there, and it is a lot easier to get funding for a franchise business than an independent business. The last point I want to pull up is the second half of our presentation today is going to be very important for you. So hang in there, because here's what we've got left to cover. Next, we do want you to be able to hear from an actual franchisor that is absolutely doing phenomenal. Whether there's a pandemic or not, it's a great business model, and we're excited to share that. He's going to be coming up here literally in 5 minutes. And then most importantly, you know, it's good to hear it from Dave and I, but you're going to have an opportunity to hear from people that have followed our process, went through the due diligence, and have actually went into franchising. So we've got a couple of franchisees that Dave and I had the pleasure and honor of helping with their discernment. So you'll be hearing from them. And then we're going to be wrapping up, and I'll be sharing with you what the next steps are from this point. So to go to what you're seeing on the slide, this really goes back to what we were talking about earlier, that there's over 4,000 franchises that are available out there. And they're not all created equal, needless to say. So one of the things that Dave and I do as part of our process in helping you navigate the franchise world is we go into details about the different franchise opportunities out there. What we've done is we've broken the 4,000 franchises up into quadrants: A, B, which is brick and mortar, okay, and C and D, which are service businesses. And I've got to tell you, there is a lot going on with C and D, and those are the franchises that the majority of people don't even realize exist and are available. So let me give you some examples of some of these quadrants on the next slide. Simple retail is exactly what it says, okay? Those are the franchises that most of us are familiar with. You know, your McDonald's, your Dunkin' Donuts, the Great Clips hair salons, you know, the ones that are brick and mortar that most of them could be in the fast food arena. Simple retail is exactly what it means. You walk in, you buy something and walk out. Quadrant B, which is also brick and mortar, is sophisticated retail. Okay, that means that that franchise requires a skilled service. Okay, you have to be skilled or licensed to perform the service that franchise is offering. Brick and mortar lends themselves to semi-absentee. Those are typically executive models where you're working on the business versus in the business. So when Dave and I are working with director or C-suite executives or existing entrepreneurs that are looking for semi-absentee models where you can keep your job, you know, quadrant A and B has got a lot of opportunities there. Now, that can also be the same with quadrant C and D. Quadrant C for us is we've taken all of the franchises that what we call our business to consumer, and you're going to be hearing from Junk Luggers today. That was a franchisor that I was mentioning earlier. And then you've got quadrant D, which is B2B, which stands for business to business. So again, business to consumer, business to business. There is a lot of successful franchisees, especially that fall into the pandemic resistant category, that we can help you get educated and learn about. I also want to point out that some of those franchises, like the one you're about to hear from, Junk Luggers, they can actually be in both quadrants. They can be a business to consumer, but they also do business to business as well. They do both commercial and direct consumer business. So that being said, I would like to let you all hear from our featured franchisor today. I do want to point out that I'll be introducing Dave Schaefer. Dave Schaefer is a franchise industry expert. He's been in the industry for a lot of years. He's got experience in all facets of franchising, and he's aligned himself with one of the fastest growing franchise brands that are out there. So the one thing that we can all confidently say is that there's always going to be junk. There's always going to be trash, and there's always going to be people moving. So without stealing Dave's thunder, I'm going to turn it over to him, and this is a chance for you to learn about one of these essential service models that are thriving, irrespective of what's going on right now. Dave, I'd like to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks for having Shirley. It's always good to listen to her. FranFund has been a great partner for us, and for many, many years. So always good to hear from her. But thank you, everybody on the call. It's amazing that everybody woke up and wanted to get into the junk removal business. So we're all aligned today. So I'll go on to the next page and explain what the Junk Luggers is. I'll tell you guys, it is a category disruptor brand. And when I say that, it is a brand that will breach the top 3 in the industry, which would be 1-800 and College Hunks, within the next year. And I'll explain what that means later. But what we are is an eco-friendly alternative to junk removal. And as we continue through the presentation, you're going to find out that we're actually a digital marketing company that moves junk in an eco-friendly way. And I'll explain that again. We are a digital marketing company that moves junk in an eco-friendly way and sustainable way. So our customers are really, there's 2 buckets here, and we're adding a third to it, but residents are about 80% of our business. And we get people who are moving, retirees, busy professionals, people decluttering. College towns make good use for us. And on the commercial side, we call it local business development. And that's real estate groups, property managers, construction, storage facilities. And the new bucket, as the company grows, and we're close to 40 states now, is national accounts, which we'll be introducing into 2021. But going forward, onto the next slide, what we do and how it works is marketing drives the leads into a home service industry. And we do marketing, we believe, better than anybody else out there. And the leads will come in from a digital source, typically, into the call center, which is 7 days a week. And the call center will submit that data and push it back out to the franchisees, and the trucks will arrive. They'll do their estimate. We are closing today over 90% of the estimates that we do. So it's a really wonderful closure rate. And then we remove, and then when we say we are eco-friendly, what that means is that we want to use the landfill as a product of last resort. So we donate, we recycle, and we upcycle. And I'll talk to you in a little bit about what upcycling actually means. But 60% of what we pick up does not go to a landfill, and consumers appreciate that. And as we move through this, we may lose sight of the eco-friendly promise that we make, but it to a course who the company is. Started back in 2004 with Josh Cohen. He's still there. He's a CEO. He started with his first truck, Old Rusty, and had built up the franchise to approximately 20 franchisees through 2018. He owns his own territory. His brother owns a really wonderful territory in Manhattan. But the thing that has made a big difference with this company is in 2019, that's Josh on the right and Larry Janeski on the left, the two partnered. And on the next slide, you're going to be able to see a little bit about Contractor Nation. I'll move one more slide further to go, actually, if we can go back one, to explain who the Contractor Nation is. Contractor Nation is a huge company out in Seymour, Connecticut, and they specialize in home services. They own about 14 home service companies. Larry is a self-made guy, and his office building is like Google. It's 400,000 square feet of office, industrial, and training space. And he does two things very well. He is a master at marketing, and he is a master at converting leads into lifelong customers. And if you go to the next slide, and you can go one more in advance of that, the Contractor Nation group owns their own marketing company, but they own their own entrepreneurial college with over 500 different businesses that paid it to learn from their system. What's interesting about junk luggers, and it's important in today's climate, is that it offers a lot of unique qualities that can give comfort to an investor. No real estate's required. There is no inventory. In fact, our P&L with a structured chart of accounts only has 11 line items. No payables, no receivables. Everything is automated. The marketing is done for you. The appointment center is taken care of for you. We do award semi-absentee, although I can tell you most people who are coming into it, once they learn the model, are choosing to dig in and to be more involved. Minimal staff required. A truck is 2 to 2.5 employees, and the investment is minimal. I'll get into that in a slide. So if we look at it, the investment for a single territory is about 150,000. A territory for us is 400,000 population. We're averaging 2.7 territories per transaction, and the average franchisee in those territories is doing just under $1 million. The corporate store, we call it our affiliate, is doing just under 3.2 million, and they have a remix center that does 362,000. A remix center basically means it's items that we pick up that can be resold, and we don't charge royalty, we don't charge advertising. It's an extra income arm that you can use once you have an established route and territory. So on to the next slide. Our trucks, there's no special license required. It's not regulated like sometimes moving companies will be, although when you enter into the junk luggers, you get three businesses. You get the junk lugger business, which is the heart and soul of the company, but we also have a local moving option that's included in the price, and the remix center that's included in the price. The trucks, you can see the dimensions. Each truck has 2 beds, and COVID has presented a pretty phenomenal opportunity for us in that we have these beds can roll off. And so on weekends, we've been dropping these beds off, and that's been adding a different type of business we didn't have before. But revenue in 2020 far exceeds 2019, and we expect the same for 2021. But the trucks are ordered. We have right now almost 100 trucks on order nationwide, and if you keep on going, your job in the business is not to be behind the wheel. If you're getting windshield time by driving the truck, you're missing the point on it. This is a marketing local business, and you're managing teams. And marketing will fill up your calendar through a system that we have. And then your job is really networking in the community, being as charitable as you can, working with hospitals, with schools. You have this vehicle that's really a mobile billboard that can help a lot of different folks in the community. And we work with that. You're going to focus on operations, administrative, everything is tied in together digitally. And it's very sophisticated and very simple to teach. If you keep on going, I want to hit the remix market. Some franchisees don't do it at all. Some are doing 5,000, 6,000 a month and just kind of doing it on the side, and some take it as a full-time business. But it is a good way to add on income once you've established your Lugger market, because unless you're picking up items, there is nothing to sell. But we'll teach you how to do all that. Hopping on to the next slide, we have the appointment center. 48 hours, we're up to 30 full-time employees, and we are completely West Coast operational right now. Great communication with the franchisees. The franchisees communicate on Slack, and our net promoter score rating is 92%. In the service world, that's amazing. If you hit the next slide, going into it, these are some of the items that we have that are tied to technology. We have our junk tech, runs the system, our CRM, keeps people coming back, 360, manages our net promoter score, and then we have GPS on all the vehicles. This picture is on here just to wow you. This is the size of the marketing team that Contractor Nation has. If you go to the next slide, you'll see everything that they do for you. They do all of your local marketing, your local website, your national, everything will be geo-fenced around you. You have the ability to upload content into your site with local widgets. And if you're not constantly creating your website, you're falling back on the organic. We help you with that. We create the turnkey business playbook, comprehensive marketing book. We do your total advertising plan. You'll have access to it. You'll have online real-time ROI on your marketing. We'll do remarketing for your customers. You'll be tied into our national website. We manage all the social media, although you can add content as well. And then we do a monthly email marketing campaign through Constant Contact. So if you look at the next slide, it's going to break out exactly what we do. All of your branding, all of your copywriting, all of your templates, all of your CRM, all of your social media, all of your media. We have our own movie studio. Treehouse marketing, if you go into the building, guys, it's a treehouse with tons of trees in the building where the employees work, almost like a Google type of feeling with it. We do all the SEO, national display, and remarketing. That's basically we're following people who click onto our main site. So going on to the last page, I believe, that's kind of the system that we're at. We have grown 300% in 2020. We had our last Discovery Day a week and a half ago, and we had over 45 individuals who wanted to think about joining our brand. It is VP levels, president levels, directors, managers of businesses. We are getting very little chuck on a truck people coming in. It's a sophisticated marketing business where you're doing a really good thing for the community. And the vibe and the validation and the happiness in the system is just incredibly unreal right now. So that's a lot of slides in a short period of time. So I apologize if I went a little bit over.
Dave, thank you so much. That was absolutely fantastic. And, folks that are on the call, I think that was a perfect example of what we talked about earlier when it comes to compressing time and capital. That I thought that was a good example of how franchising helped you. You've got, with this particular brand, fantastic marketing and operational support. And I thought the big takeaway here that Dave really elaborated well on is this. It's not about you being behind the truck. You're working on the business versus in it. It's a recession-proof business. It's somewhat pandemic resistant. We won't get into return on investment in economics, but this is a brand that Dave and I do a lot with, that it's a true testimony when you have investors moving forward. That's a true testimony to the brand and how well they validate when investors are doing their due diligence. Absolutely fabulous brand that we can talk about one-on-one. And Dave, thanks again for the partnership and your time.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Mike.
You bet. Next up, folks, is we're down to the wire here. You know, you've heard a lot today. We appreciate you staying with us and hoping that this is helpful. You know, I can't emphasize enough how, you know, we're passionate about entrepreneurship. And the fact of the matter is that you've got options. There's a lot of options out there. Whether you want to stay in corporate America, whether you want to be an entrepreneur and diversify, whether you're looking to be an owner operator, whether you're looking to scale and build value and equity with the cash flow and asset on a big level, there's all different types of paths that we can talk about with. And what I'd like to do now is what we have left here is very important. We want to share and let you hear from a couple of folks that have gone through the due diligence process, did the investigation, and found franchises that are a great fit for them. So once we let you meet with our two franchisees here, after that, we'll be wrapping up and talking about next steps. So let's go ahead and let you hear from two great entrepreneurs. We're going to start with Rob Gledu. He had worked with David Jones. He invested into Floor Coverings International. Real quickly, Rob was previously his family and himself owned an ornamental ironworks business. This is a perfect example of somebody that had an independent business, decided to diversify and looked into franchises. He had researched a number of home service brands, very good with his due diligence, working with Dave. He opened his first Floor Coverings International franchise in January of 2020. Imagine that. We all know what happened in February and March. And during that stressful time with the pandemic and as a new owner, he successfully launched and grew that business to well over $350,000 during COVID-19 in his initial year while learning. So I'm not going to steal too much of Rob's thunder, but I would like Rob, he's going to read off, you know, we've got some questions on there that are pretty straightforward, and then he's going to, you know, share his story to each of those bullet points. Thanks for joining us, Rob.
Thanks for having me, Mike. Thank you for that introduction. In fact, hey, you said it all. You said it better than I could say it, I think. So
you did great, Rob. I mean, you're a testimony to the power of franchising. So kudos to you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So, but I like Mike said, it was a challenge. Opening up, I think my first day was the day after Christmas. We really I hit the road running, and you know, it was almost like a day later. You know, well, we got a problem. You know, and and we you know we trudged on and got through it, and we're getting through it. And what you find out is that sometimes when you have a lot of adversity like this, you find a way. And I think that this is one of the great things about being in a franchise is that when you're up against a big challenge, and sometimes these challenges are greater than we are, especially as, you know, people starting a new business, and you're green still, you know, you need help, you need some guidance, and being in a franchise really helped me with that. Floor Coverings International has a very beefy system. In other words, you know, they help out with the marketing and both the digital marketing, local marketing, and just about every facet of the business that I need to start my business. Now, when COVID came, we had to realign a lot of things. We went back into our business plan. I had, we made some adjustments based on the plan. And the reason that we did this was because we had to figure out budgets. And, you're not going to spend the same amount of money on your marketing that you might have without COVID. So we made those adjustments and came out with a revised plan and followed that. And we are doing that again. Revising the plan for this coming year. We finished, but they help with those things, which kind of gave me a lot of comfort and confidence moving forward. So they're helping with the PPP funding and all those things that are out there that, you know what, I really cannot imagine doing on my own without the help of with a franchise behind me. Floor Coverings International, top notch. Not only is it fun, before COVID, we would go out, would always be bowling with corporate once every few months, doing different types of meetings and training, whether it's training our DAs or design associates. Those are our employees who are out there in the front lines selling, or it's another event possibly, but and once a year we go out to Mexico. We have big meetings out there once a year as well at our convention. So there's a lot of fun. I've met many great friends, and if anything else, I have that to say for it. But working with a franchise consultant it changed my life. Dave helped me consider this goal in owning my own business and what it would take to get there. And when it came to, I would say, especially from funding the business, I had no idea I could do it. There are ways, I think you've heard in the last hour or so, that there's a way of transferring over your 401k the right way. And there are people out there to help you do that. So when I found out, hey, I can actually do this, it was probably one of the most exciting and horrifying parts of my life that I've ever experienced. It's almost like when you have your first child, you're scared to death. At the same time, you're shaking with excitement, and that's the way it felt. But I have to say that working with Dave Jones, in my case, was an honor working with him actually, and he helped me out from beginning to end, and that was my experience. I hope I answered all the questions, and I'm not running too long.
Rob, that was fantastic. Mike, let me jump in. What Rob is being very humble about is, so coming through 2020, true confessions and true statements. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of transparency in the world of franchising, and you're going to get straight scoop. Secondly, the humility. He is off in 2021, and at one point during January, and I'm not sure where it's going to end, but is in the top 10 nationwide, going on his first lap around the track and into his second year, and at one point was number 4. So Rob is, it's that recalibration we talked about, and employing your resources where you know what's working, and stop employing them where they're not working. So great job, Rob. Congratulations. In 2021, you are going to crush it.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Fantastic. Thank you. And thank you, Dave. Next up, I had the pleasure of meeting this gentleman, and quite frankly, when I learned a little bit about his background and saw how successful of an entrepreneur he was, it was just impressive to me. So I'd like to introduce next Sean McNally, and as I alluded to, he's been a very long time successful entrepreneur, independent, self-made man. Built a phenomenal business. And then, like many folks out there, COVID came along, had an impact, and, he quickly pivoted and wanted to look at diversification. and how he can diversify his portfolio. And of course, I had the pleasure of connecting with Sean, and I'm going to let Sean tell you a little bit about his story on what made him want to move forward with becoming a franchisee and going through those bullet points there. Sean, welcome.
Thanks, Mike. You hear me okay?
We can. Yep.
Well, thanks, guys. I'm not sure I'm worthy after hearing those past couple presentations, but thank you for having me. And I'm, happy to add whatever I can to the mix here. I'm not quite sure who the audience is or where everybody's calling in from, but I'm looking out my window. It's snowing. I'm in Boston, and hope you're keeping nice and safe and warm wherever you are. So, yeah, I'll just kind of, if I go off track, I apologize, but Mike kind of laid it out there. I was never, well, I'll step back a little bit first. My background is, I went to school in Boston, Northeastern. I'm 54 years old. I started working in just doing nightclubs. I was a bouncer. I did security at the old Boston Garden. I got tied to the music scene in Boston. Ended up bouncing and been head of security, then assistant general manager. Got more into the business side of things. Fell in love with music. Managed bands, booked tours. Got tied into the music business for quite a while, and then that kind of winded down. I'd say around 2000 or so. And then I got into my own thing. I got married, had kids, started the whole suburbia white picket fence thing, 2 dogs, 2 kids, and basically started my own business selling tickets. So I was selling tickets as a licensed ticket broker. I was booking concerts. I was also setting up sports travel trips, like for, we're big Boston sports fans here. Red Sox trips to New York, Bruins trips to Montreal, Patriots road trips, that kind of deal, setting up tickets, hotels, flights, a whole deal. And then I kind of transitioned mostly just into doing tickets itself, because the whole travel thing was kind of a pain in the butt, and, having people make deposits and whatnot and chasing people for money. It just became too cumbersome to deal with. So basically I was just doing tickets for quite a while, and it became very successful with it. A lot of that's very thankful to the Boston sports teams having tremendous success, of course, but we, diversified into owning tickets all across the country, lots of season tickets. And the ticket business was great. We sold tickets for almost 18 years. And then, COVID struck last March. So we literally went to zero overnight. I mean, it was essentially, we were in business selling tickets all over the country. And then we were booking concerts and managing bands and promoting shows. And both industries went literally to zero overnight, as you know, with COVID. So, that was kind of an awakening. I'd actually started to transition. I was looking to get back into music business, actually. So I was looking, and thankfully in one way, I kind of downsized a little bit with the music stuff and the tickets, but I was trying to get back into a club. I almost bought a club, actually, back in February. In hindsight, thankfully, I didn't do that because, again, COVID struck right after that, and I'd probably be sitting on that loss of money at this point. But so anyway, I put my resume out there, just trying to see what else was available. I got a cold call from somebody who works with Mike, and I thought it was just one of those prank calls. Someone's always calling, looking for money, or looking for, talk to me about something. And I was driving the car. I said, well, have him call me back tomorrow. He did call me. So Mike and I chatted for the first time, and he kind of introduced the whole idea of franchising to me. And when I think of franchising, I think of things like, Home Depot, McDonald's, Burger King, CVS, et cetera, et cetera. But I didn't really know much about it. I was intrigued by it. So I said, yeah, tell me what it's all about. And he kind of picked my brain. We had a couple of good conversations just to kind of feel where I'm coming from. I said it was important to me. I stayed in the Boston area. I've got kids. Unfortunately, also in 2020, got divorced. So it was kind of a, pile on. It wasn't my choice, but pile on to 2020 was a terrible year for a lot of reasons. But I want to stay close to my kids. They're teenagers. I've been involved in their lives the entire time they've been around with sports and whatnot. So I wanted that kind of freedom as I'd have my own business, so I could go to, attend my kids' games and practices and whatnot and be in their lives. So I want to stay local. I want to have some freedom. So the whole, Mike took all the information and came back to me with some different ideas about what was important to me. So staying local, having a semi-absentee kind of interest. And he came back with 7 different franchises, and I'd heard of none of them before, which I thought was amazing. So I'm assuming I hear about Dunkin' Donuts, these other brands, but I heard 7 different brands I never heard of before. There were 2 that kind of jumped out in my mind immediately. One of them was Premier Martial Arts, where I'm heading into this point. But the ones that the factors like Mike had mentioned a couple of times in this call already. The semi-absentee was attractive to me. A business that's essentially recession-proof or COVID-proof as much as it can be, because people still want to keep their kids busy, whether it's sports or PMA in this instance. And they've even found a way to do it during COVID with having Zoom calls and whatnot, which is fairly amazing. So those are important factors. A fairly low investment to get involved in the business. A low employee count. There's only a couple of people per location typically that work. And again, I had like zero martial arts background. So to me, it was kind of like at first, martial arts, what is that even? No, thank you. I kind of moved on immediately from that. But then I heard more about it, and it just made a lot more sense to me. And the more I thought about it, looked into it more, it's a chance to kind of shape kids at a very impressionable age when they're 5 to 12 years old. So that was appealing to me, to have a positive influence, help kids with anti-bullying, self-defense, confidence, a lot of different reasons why it kind of jumped out as being a very, very interesting and intriguing business model. And it makes money. Also very important, of course. It makes money, and they've got a really good track record for being a fairly new brand. And again, it kind of worked out. The timing was like, I never looked at doing anything besides doing music and tickets. But again, when COVID, you kind of have to pivot and figure out what's next in your life. So what better time to try and do my next thing with everything else going on in the world right now? So I decided to go with PMA, just signed up. I'm actually going to be, I'm very, very new to this, obviously, because I'm just starting my process with them. But I did attend their Discovery Day down in their hometown of Knoxville a few weeks back, which I'm sure Mike can tell you about. But essentially, you go and you meet the people who are running the business. You get a good feeling for it, and it kind of just confirms your thought process and make sure it's really what you're looking to do. You have a really great support team in place, which this PMA certainly does. It sounds like the same was with Rob, was just saying with floor coverings, and even the junk luggers guys. They seem like they have a really good team of support in their background to help you along the way. And they're not going to hold your hand, but they can be there as a great reference tool if you get stuck on something or have a question or hit a roadblock. That's one kind of amazing thing with this whole franchise idea, is that you can literally depend on somebody else or refer to somebody. And my experience has been, they've all been extremely helpful. It's not a competition thing. It's not like, oh, they're going to take my customers away. It's more like, hey, how can I help this guy help his business? So we're all in it for the same reason, essentially. So once you're involved with a franchise, my experience so far, at least, is they're very, very helpful, understanding. We'll give you some tips. It's kind of like a cheer each other on kind of team. There's like private Facebook groups and whatnot where you can communicate with each other and, what's working for you in your territory, your network, et cetera, et cetera. So in that respect, it's kind of a pretty amazing process, number one. So, I'm thankful, number one, I didn't just hang up with that phone call with Mike's assistant when she called me. And I decided to kind of go through the process here, but hopefully I'm not like ramming all over the place. But essentially, it's an opportunity for anybody who's looking to either diversify what they're doing, or in my situation, it's more of not quite semi-absentee. I'm looking to kind of put both feet in at the beginning, at least, because I've got the time where my business is basically gone because of COVID. So I'm looking to kind of expedite the process and maybe get my first school open soon, then my second and third and fourth. The idea is you can scale this and make it to a pretty profitable business and income stream. And then maybe down the road, I'll buy my club. I'll get a couple of clubs going too at some point. Who knows? But that's just kind of on the exciting future kind of holds kind of barrier right now. But that's kind of where I'm at. So again, sorry if I rambled a bit, and if I can add anything else more, Mike, or take any questions, I'm happy to do that. But all I can say is, as far as I didn't even answer the question, did I? Prior to
You're doing great. No, I appreciate it. Yep.
I'm just saying, appreciate most about working with Mike. What I appreciated most with my franchise consultant is, honestly, he called and said, it's really a no risk, no commitment. I'm going to throw some ideas at you. And, if what I suggest to you doesn't work, let's talk about another idea. And that's really what it has been. I've felt no commitment, no like pressure to like, okay, I better choose one or the other. It just kind of been more of a conversational thing where he understands where I'm coming from, what's important to me or my stage in life, and what I'm looking to do myself going forward. And there are opportunities out there, and he'll try and, he's almost like a realtor. Like I think I mentioned this before, he's almost like a realtor. He's trying to put me in contact with my best potential property. So in the case of a house, it's going to be a business. So I'm looking to do what's next for me. Where's the best location? what's the best opportunity to probably do what I want to do that meets my goals. And in that respect, Mike's kind of been a great, director to kind of point me in a certain direction, or at least even open my eyes to things I never would have even thought of in the first place. So, but that's where I'm at now. So I'm hoping I can add some positive experience to what you guys are looking at here, and happy to answer any questions.
Sean, fantastic. I can't thank you enough. And there's no question in my mind that, I'll be hearing about you in the Premier Martial Arts Hall of Fame, I'm sure. So that's fantastic. Well, thank you again to both you and Rob and Shirley with Fran Fun and Dave at Junk Luggers. This pretty much brings us to the wrap up of our presentation. We hope that this was very helpful in opening your minds and understanding, that this is an educational process and that you do have options out there. So here is really what we've got for next steps. Okay. Basically what I'm going to be doing is sending out an email. Okay. We'll send an email out to schedule a one-on-one. Okay, so if you'd like to continue this conversation, we want to learn about you. Okay, we want to understand your business goals. Let's see if franchising could be a viable option for you. So step number one is you'll get an email from me, and make sure you check your spam folder. Sometimes I get routed into the old junk mail, but you should be getting an email from us today or tomorrow. And it'll have a confidential questionnaire in there that takes about 15 minutes to fill out. If you're serious about getting educated and learning more, take the time to fill that questionnaire out. It's very important. It's very non-invasive, and it's a critical first step. So when we get that questionnaire back, then either Dave or myself will personally reach out to you to schedule a one-on-one individual section. We've got some time blocked off next week, and we'll take about 30 minutes to talk about your goals. As Sean mentioned, this isn't, car shopping. Let's see if owning a business can be a viable path. If you already have a business and you're interested in diversifying, let's talk about it. So anyway, we want to thank everybody for their time. Dave, do you have any last minute things you want to mention here before we wrap up?
No, at the risk of being redundant, thanks to everybody, but thanks to you especially. Those folks who have attended, as you heard, this is about keeping an open mind. You will hear opportunities in all likelihood you never heard of or never hear of otherwise. We love doing this. We're good at it. We're passionate about it, and we love to help. So if we can help you, just act on to follow up the email. We'll schedule a one-on-one, and we'll see where it leads. Thank you again for attending. Thanks, Mike. And that concludes our presentation.
Thank you. Bye now.